In the world of audio, one piece of equipment rules as the undisputed king of sound. One device so legendary that it is often labeled the holy grail of the mixing world. This device could be none other than the Fairchild Limiter. This holy grail label was earned not only through its beloved tonal quality and compression characteristics, but also its rarity and subsequent price tag. The cost of an original unit from the 50s or 60s can reach the hundreds of thousands, although these prices can range greatly according to their conditions, restorations, modifications, and historical legacy. But those who can't afford a vintage unit, don't worry. Telefunken now produces a cheaper, modern recreation, and it's only... So just like the Altec RS-124, owning a Fairchild of my own was always a maybe one day if you're lucky, end of the rainbow, castle in the air, pipe dream fantasy. And then somehow, Heritage Audio had to go and make both of my wildest dreams come true. So I am incredibly proud to be one of the first ever to present to you the brand new Heritage Audio. Give me 1 second, I'll show it to you in a minute, but please stick with me for this history lesson. I promise it's interesting, and it's critical for understanding just how insane of a feat Heritage Audio has pulled here. The Fairchild was designed by Roan Narma shortly after he developed the first 8-track mixing console at the request of Les Paul. Les Paul was impressed with Narma's craftsmanship and commissioned a very new limiter. You know who else Narma impressed? Sherman Fairchild, owner of over 70 different companies responsible for such inventions like, I don't know, the silicone semiconductor, cameras used on the Apollo missions. Oh, and you know the A-10 Warthog attack plane? That's the Fairchild Republic A-10 Warthog attack plane. So Lockheed Martin, when are we getting a Neve 1073 clone? Anyways, Sherman hired Narma to become the chief engineer at the Fairchild Recording Equipment Corporation to develop the 660 and 670 for commercial production in 1959. The Fairchild limiters were initially designed for cutting lacquer masters, preventing unwanted peaks from cutting too deep into the incredibly thin vinyl records of the time. They were also marketed for radio and television broadcasts, which explains some of the more unconventional attack and release settings on the unit. They were never quite meant to impart color or mojo onto the source material. In fact, they weren't really meant to be heard at all. But then came the 1960s, and at some London recording studio called Abbey Road, the engineers working with some band called the Beatles quickly discovered that the Fairchilds had some seriously unique sonic characteristics outside of the mastering studio. By 1964, every Beatles vocal was processed through one of the 12 Fairchild 660s at Abbey Road. And by 1967, at Ringo's request for a larger-than-life drum sound, Jeff Emick broke all of Abbey Road's rules for equipment handling and pushed the Fairchilds way harder than ever intended. The lab techs thought that pushing the limiters this hard could actually cause equipment damage, but damage or not, it produced Ringo's legendary drum sound heard on Revolver, Sgt. Pepper, and beyond. This reputation helped the Fairchilds find their way onto many of your other favorite classics, and established them as a hot commodity for many recording studios. And a hot commodity it was. When not squashing Ringo's cymbals or Jimmy Page's guitars, the Fairchilds doubled as a space heater, with stereo units boasting 20 tubes and 11 transformers. They were also giant and weighed over 65 pounds each. Even for the time, they were expensive, cumbersome behemoths, and considering their low production numbers, they were destined to become unobtainable in the modern era. But the people never forgot the Fairchild sound, and demand increased for a more accessible option. Today, there are a handful of modern recreations for those chasing the dragon, but any reproduction that stays true to Roan Narma's original circuit is bound to require the same set of expensive components, many of which are nearly impossible to source today. The main differences in these recreations is how each manufacturer circumvents these limitations, and the cost at which they're able to do so. The most uncompromising recreation is Telefunken's, a vintage brand now known for the relentlessly faithful resurrections of vintage microphones. Telefunken recently bought the rights to the official Fairchild name and cloned the circuit to a T, including all of the rare components. However, this also meant cloning the limitations of a compressor built for a bygone era, and of course the hefty price tag. In order to keep costs down, most manufacturers have opted to make certain compromises, such as tube substitutions or circuit modifications, and many have tweaked the original control scheme to better adapt it for modern applications. Examples of these are the Stam Audio Stamchild, the Undertone Audio Unfairchild, the Chandler Limited RS660, and Heritage Audio's own Herchild. But since all of these are still largely faithful to the original circuit design, we still get prices like these. So when Heritage Audio released the Grandchild 670 in 2023, a 500 series format stereo Fairchild clone, it was a remarkable feat of engineering. They had kept only what was responsible for the majority of the sound and cut corners where they weren't necessary, kinda like how I built this microphone. Somehow, they managed to fit the essence of the Fairchild sound into a tiny housing, using only 4 tubes. Even more impressive, it retails for only $2,000. This made the Grandchild an incredibly attractive option for those who couldn't afford to drop $5,000 to $30,000, didn't need dual mono functionality, didn't require an easily accessible sidechain switch or output attenuators, and were willing to compromise on the giant VU meters and chunky knobs. But what about those who still can't afford to drop $5,000 to $30,000 but really like all of those other things? Especially the giant VU meters and chunky knobs. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to be one of the first people in the world to showcase to you Heritage Audio's latest unveiling, the Herchild Next Generation 670N. Heritage Audio has taken everything they've learned from making their faithful full-size Herchild 670 and their shrunken-down Grandchild 670 and have combined their forces. The Next Gen 670 claims to boast 97% of the sound quality of their flagship offering, but at a ludicrously low price. This 5-rack unit beast features 2 glowing full-size VU meters, massive stepped Bakelite knobs, dual mono, stereo, mid-side or mid-side link functionality, an expanded sidechain suite, output attenuators, and pass-through bypass switches, all of this coming in at $3,000. When Heritage Audio first sent me the brochure for this unit, I couldn't believe what I was reading, but now, having it all set up, I still can't believe it. Let's start with the build quality and feel of this unit. And if you think that feel doesn't matter and that sound is the only thing a responsible engineer should care about, first of all, that's very boring and I probably don't want to hang out with you. And second of all, that would be like a limousine manufacturer deciding that the interior comfort of their limos doesn't matter, and that it's all about the engine and driving performance. A big part of what we love about the Fairchild is its industrial look and premium feeling interface. It's a crucial part of the Fairchild experience, and as someone who got to play with the real deal at last year's Audio Engineering Society convention, boy does the Herchild Next Gen deliver. Let's listen to some knobs, shall we? Like, come on now. These giant Bakelite knobs are custom molded by Heritage Audio and feel fantastic with a nice resistance and are gently stepped for easy recall. The VU meters glow a beautiful amber color and turn off when in bypass. I have it racked up in this beautiful Tolex rack box by Pro Speaker Parts, and in this setting it looks just like a Fairchild. But let's take a look from another angle. It is somehow both colossal and tiny. It's also shockingly light. And hey, future me who didn't forget to weigh it before recording, how much does it weigh?
12.8 pounds.
Certainly lighter than 65 pounds. Like the Grandchild 670, they've stripped everything but what is crucial to the Fairchild sound. So instead of 20 tubes and 11 transformers, we have 4 tubes and 6 transformers. But these 4 tubes are vintage new old stock, the same ones that they use in their flagship model. Let's talk functionality. While the layout is not quite as clean and streamlined as the original unit, Heritage Audio managed to pack tons of new features into a smaller footprint without it feeling overly cluttered. These extra functions are a very welcome addition and have been incorporated elegantly into the interface. For instance, the bypass switch has replaced the less crucial meter selection knob on the original interface, you no longer need a flathead screwdriver to adjust the DC threshold, and the advanced sidechain options and output attenuators allow for deeper level of control and convenience for use with an audio interface. To operate any Fairchild, you drive your input into the circuit with the input gain knob, with higher levels of gain reduction getting more tone and saturation out of the unit. The AC threshold knob then determines the general amount of gain reduction, while the DC threshold knob determines whether it acts more like a compressor with a soft knee and a low ratio or more like a limiter with a hard knee and a high ratio. The sidechain filter tells the compressor what parts of the input signal to be sensitive to and has some very interesting options. A standard low cut at 80 or 160 Hz will likely make the compressor react less to the increased low end of a modern mix and are common to see on today's compressors and Fairchild recreations. However, we also get the option to emphasize gain reduction at 1 kHz or 3 kHz, which can help tame a source with an unruly mid-range. There is then a 5 kHz high pass option, telling the compressor to emphasize gain reduction on treble heavy content. This essentially turns the Herchild into the most luxurious de-esser you've ever had, but surprisingly, de-essing was actually a common use case for the 660s at Abbey Road when working with the Beatles. They would often send a copy of the vocals with the treble boosted into the sidechain to get this effect. These are exciting new additions that may allow you to use this unit in situations where the real deal might not even cut it. Next, we have the time constant knob, which is an infamously confusing and complex control in the Fairchild. There are no individually addressable attack and release times. Instead, we have 6 presets with predetermined times. However, I've heard that Heritage Audio has also slightly modified these presets, but since the manual is not finished at the time of recording this, I'm going to pass it to my friend to the future again to explain this one. Hello. Future me had a bit of a drumming accident while recording the theme song of this video. You should have seen the drumstick. Anyways, it turns out that the time constants are actually pretty much the same as any other Fairchild, but if anything, TC1 might be a tad bit faster on this unit. This setting has a 0.2 millisecond attack and 300 millisecond release. Forget whatever notion you may have that all tube compressors are slow and gooey. This setting is well within 1176 speeds. TC2 has the same attack speed but an 800 millisecond release. TC3 has a slightly slower but still incredibly fast 0.4 millisecond attack speed and a 2-second release. This is the setting you've been hearing on my voice throughout this video. TC4 has the same attack as TC3 but with a 5-second release. Then we get to the confusing ones, the program dependent settings. Get ready, because although it's about to get nerdy, I'm very proud of how I've described this, and I wish somebody could have explained it to me the way I'm going to explain it to you. TC5 shares the same settings as TC3 on individual peaks, but when multiple peaks are detected, it has a long 10-second release. So it'll behave like TC3 on sudden spikes in volume, like a cough or a plosive or a single drum hit. But if there are multiple peaks, like within someone's dialogue or in a drum beat, it may introduce some longer release times. Stick with me here, it'll make more sense in a second. TC6 shares the same settings as TC1, the fastest setting, but with a 10-second release when multiple peaks are detected, and up to a 25-second release when consistently high program material is played. Now that might sound stupidly long and unusable, but it doesn't actually end up taking 25 seconds to let go. Say you're compressing drums with TC6 and getting 7 dB of gain reduction. The individual peaks get squashed and then let go rather quickly, but not all the way back to 0. This last little bit of gain reduction from 2 dB to nothing, that's what takes a long time. So your kick and snare aren't getting long release times, but the hi-hat or tambourine hit after them will be a little quieter than on TC1, where it would have fully reset to 0 by then. Sometimes this means you can have your cake and eat it too. Fully compressed kick and snare, but without the splatty hi-hats in between that can come from too much compression. However, this does mean that you won't have the full bloom after every snare hit, where it goes from 7 dB to 0 dB and brings out all that natural room reverb. It's a classier sound, on a classy compressor. I've printed some waveforms here where I suddenly reduced the volume of a song and compared the outputs from TC1 and TC6. Again, these share the same attack and release settings in the short term, but TC6 can introduce longer release times in the long term. You can see that they achieve similar compression when the material is consistent, but TC1 immediately lets go of the material when it gets quieter, and TC6 preserves this difference in volume at first and then lets go. Now here's the analogy I'd wish somebody had told me. Think of it like the classic trick of using an 1176 into an LA2A on vocals. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're a huge nerd like me and you know what that means, but just in case you don't, the 1176 is very fast and catches all the peaks like individual syllables, and then it goes into an LA2A, which is very slow and shapes the general contour of entire phrases. Think of TC1 like using just an 1176, and TC6 like sharing the load between an 1176 and an LA2A. It's a lot of numbers and letters. So back to this picture. In TC1, the 1176 is doing all the work, compressing everything, and then when the material gets quiet, it immediately stops. Think of it like a coworker who leaves the office immediately at 5 PM. In TC6, the 1176 and LA2A are sharing the load, and when 5 PM rolls around, 1176 leaves the office, but LA2A catches up on some last-minute work for 10 to 25 seconds before leaving. Next, there are the stereo linking options. Independent turns both channels into 2 separate mono compressors with 2 different settings. Think maybe a verse vocal and a chorus vocal, or a kick drum and a snare drum. Next, there's your standard stereo link for use on stereo sources. Then, we have an echo of the lathe cutting days, a lateral vertical setting. This is essentially 2 independent settings, one for the information in the middle, and one for the sides of the stereo field. This is a dangerous setting if you don't know what you're doing, as you have different fluctuations in volume for your mids and sides, so your whole stereo image will be moving all around. Luckily, there's a latvert link, which applies the same compression to the whole stereo image, but by adjusting the input gain or output gain, you can increase the volume of the side material to get a stereo enhancing effect. I actually really like the sound of this, and it's a neat trick for mastering. And finally, there's a transparent makeup gain or output attenuation knob, allowing you to gain match your dry and wet signal regardless of how hard you're driving the input and how much gain reduction you're getting. Now all that is great on paper, but it's very reasonable to be skeptical of a few things at this point. It may look like a Fairchild and feel like a Fairchild, but with such a small circuit inside and with only 4 out of the 20 tubes, can it actually sound like a Fairchild? Sadly, I don't have a bunch of other Fairchilds to shoot it out against. My bad. But I'm gonna let the sound of this thing speak for itself. All audio examples are my own recordings of myself, aside from a few of my client's vocals and a couple loops from the Apple Loop library. These have been processed with an Apollo 8P and gain matched to the best of my ability. I'll leave you two alone now. Have fun. slow, tiptoeing the line. No strings holding onto what's mine. It's slow, tiptoeing the line. No strings holding onto what's mine. I get lonely. I get lonely. I'll let you pick out anything you like. I'm every shape and color you can dream. And I won't say, remember when you ran away and nearly tore your baby's heart apart.
You keep me up at night, and I just wanna see your face, and I just wanna see your face, and leave the rest behind. And I just wanna see your face, and leave the rest behind. You got your bad body on mine, you got me working overtime. Baby, is it bad that I don't mind that I've seen the devil? I got my bad body on yours, you got my heart beating for more. Baby, is it bad that I am sure that I've seen the devil?
I think they pulled off a miracle. It sounds so good. It has that iconic squish that's both pillowy and soft, yet dense at the same time. It's not punchy like the P-Lane. Think more like a 18-wheeler with a giant pillow in front of it. It adds this weight and body to every source and gets really fat when pushed. It has an unmatched ability to bring things to the forefront of a mix, enriching the mid-range and bringing out atmosphere and texture, especially on vocals. It's almost like it sees the untapped potential in every source and coaxes it out. It can get violent. Its extremely fast attack times can decapitate the thwack. Fast attack times get decapitate the thwack. What the fuck? Its extremely fast attack times can decapitate the thwack of a snare or the pick scrape of an acoustic guitar, but the way it does it feels so natural and so human. Fairchilds are also the only compressor I can think of that have the potential to be used on every single source. Pro engineers have used them on bass, drums, vocals, guitars, pianos, mix bus, and master bus. And on a mix, this thing has a wonderful stereo image and sense of cohesion, blending together separate elements and making them get along. You do have to be careful with overdoing it, because while it's great for taming peaks and gluing sources, it can also lop off transients and remove punch from a mix when pushed too far. These fast times can also generate a clicky, sandpaper-like tone on sources like vocals if pushed too far with the fastest settings. A common simile is a sports car, extravagant and fun to drive, but challenging and potentially dangerous on the wrong hands. But get to know this compressor and let it reveal its secrets to you, and you have a unique weapon with a sound unobtainable by any other piece of gear. So what could have been better? The word link on the Latvert link setting should also be read, so it's clear that that's one setting. I don't know, man. That's all I got. This thing rocks. Its super fast attack times and specific vibe guarantee that it's not the right choice in every situation, but that comes with the territory if you're in the market for a Fairchild. Perhaps I don't know what I'm missing, and this thing is miles away from a real Fairchild, but I really doubt it. For me, this is as close to the Fairchild sound as I ever dreamed of, and to have this and the P-Lane in my studio, it's an insurmountable honor and privilege. And I'm beyond excited that such a previously inaccessible joy is now far more accessible to so many people. I understand that $3,000 is still an astronomically high amount for most hobbyist musicians. Hell, if this was a few years ago, this thing would be worth more than my entire studio setup combined. But we need to understand the cost relative to what's being sold, which is a professional level luxury product usually inaccessible to all but the top studios in the world. Even if this product is not worth your investment, it just became an option to a whole new world of enthusiasts and mid-tier professionals like myself, and that is a triumph on Heritage Audio's part. And for those willing to compromise in a few areas to get a similar sound for even less, the Grandchild 670 is an excellent option. And if that's still too much, there are plenty of Fairchild plugin recreations that are likely more than enough to get you a professional sound. This plugin I got for $50 is all over my latest album. But a plugin can't do this. Heritage Audio had only 2 units that could be shipped out to reviewers, and it is because of your incredible support on my last few videos that I was selected. It is mostly because of you guys that this dream of mine has come true, and I am forever in your debt. Thank you so very much. By the way, the other YouTuber that was shipped a unit is Josh Seawell from Seawell Studios, and although I've not seen his video at the time of recording this, I'm sure it is excellent and I cannot wait to watch it. I have it linked in the description, so definitely go subscribe to Josh, one of the best hardware reviewers out there right now. Thank you so much to Heritage Audio, especially Dave and Peter, for entrusting me with the unveiling of such an important release and allowing me to keep it for my own productions. You can rest assured you'll be hearing this and the P-Lane on every single release of mine from here on out. Until next time, thank you, and take care.